Happy Saturday, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing with a lot to talk about, from winter weather with a snowstorm underway across the northern Rockies, across portions of the northern plains, even near the portions of the Minnesota Arrowhead are getting quite a bit of snow. Water spouts over the Great Lakes. So the water spout reported yesterday near Mackinac Bridge. Also, wildfires continue to rage here in the Colorado Rockies. We'll touch on that as well. And the insane GFS model runs last night, yesterday afternoon, bringing a hurricane up from the western Caribbean across Cuba, stalling out over Florida, then meandering back to the west over the Gulf of Mexico before dropping south into the Yucatan. The 0Z GFS backed off of that a little bit. The 12Z GFS, though, shows a similar situation. Basically, though, it does look like there is going to be a tropical cyclone that's going to come out of the western Caribbean from that gyre that's supposed to develop there the second half of next week. Some of the models, though, show a pretty strong hurricane passing over central Cuba, parking over the Bahamas, and then turning back to the west. Other models have that a weaker tropical cyclone ejecting off to the northeast ahead of that trough that's supposed to solidify over the central U.S. But the 18Z GFS run yesterday definitely showed through a curveball with a much weaker trough evolving over the central U.S. and, in fact, even shearing out over very strong Bermuda high and a westward extension of that anticyclone over the southeast U.S. All season long, that high pressure, the western lobe of that high, has been incredibly fortified and intense, and that has allowed storms to pass into the Gulf of Mexico, be blocked from recurving into the open Atlantic around the western edge of that Bermuda high. Basically, the western extension of that anticyclone into the southeastern U.S. has definitely contributed to a record-breaking Gulf of Mexico season. And it also looks like there could be new development from this upper-level low that was to the east of Bermuda. It is starting to slowly develop tropical characteristics. We'll take a look at that as well on satellite imagery. But this is likely going to be a non-factor out there. It is possible that that could become Tropical Cyclone Epsilon before the one that's going to develop in the western Caribbean. Really, it is just a race between these two zones to see which one's going to become Epsilon. Either way, though, I do think it looks like there's going to be a tropical cyclone that should emerge from the western Caribbean, even though most of the GFS models are very aggressive with development down there, and the European model not nearly as aggressive with development. We're still going to go through those GFS runs, even if it might be a little bit painful out there in fantasy land, showing some of the crazy motion of those hurricanes. Here you can see I've got my Dell Latitude Rugged laptop here. I'm definitely going to be bringing this into the field next. Maybe for the next hurricane as well, just to see how storm-proof it really is. Excited to team up with Dell to bring these intense laptops into the field, into hurricanes, chasing tornadoes with those, even snowstorms. But these are those two hot spots that we're going to be analyzing in the models. But first, I want to cover this winter weather advisory across portions of the northern plains. This is a frontogenesis event, basically a jet streak passing over a temperature gradient, leading to an enhanced band of precipitation. The hardest hit areas are going to be the mountains of western Montana, also northern Idaho, into the mountains of western Wyoming as well. But the Black Hills are also under a winter weather advisory, and these are some of the new tools on the Radar Omega app here showing these winter weather alerts. You can also change the color to show which precipitation is winter weather, which is liquid precipitation. But mostly it's going to be about a 2 to 4 inch, 3 to 5 inch type snowfall. 2 to 5 inches is the official there. In the Black Hills, that includes Deadwood, 2 to 5 inches. That's going to be today, through the day tomorrow, overnight tonight. But it is raining right now across the Black Hills. But that's supposed to change over to snow and then ramp up tonight, definitely with some impacts. But winter is certainly on the way. We actually have an upgrade to a winter storm warning here on the mountains just outside of the Helena area. Snow accumulations additional. Snow accumulations up to 4 inches on top of already a couple inches, 1 to 2 inches that has already fallen. Heavy snow falling there across western Montana. And that winter storm warning actually includes the Helena area there. And a lot of the, even though precipitation is falling, a lot of it is being blocked by the mountains out here. But you can definitely move through the different radar images and see the banding of snow, even some convective elements to the snowfall here outside of Missoula, passing into the winter storm warning area. So definitely some several inches of snow happening. Winter is definitely on the way across the northern Rockies. Looks like a special weather statement here just outside of Bozeman. A band of heavy snow. Northern Gallatin County from west of Bozeman up to Bozeman Pass, including portions of I-90 between mile markers 292 and 321. Visibilities definitely could drop there. That winter weather advisory is in effect, and that goes all the way down through portions of central, southern, into north central Wyoming, down here near the Sheridan area. You may remember when we're chasing high plains, a lot of times this north-south band of mountains here is definitely efficient at generating supercell storms that will move east and a lot of times produce hail and tornadoes across the Gillette area, the adjacent high plains here. But these mountains are getting hammered to the west of Buffalo and to Sheridan. You can see a pretty heavy band of snow in the northern side of that winter weather advisory area. And then off to the east, you can see that winter weather advisory, including deadwood, south of Spearfish, the western slopes of those mountains. And as I mentioned, this is caused by a Frontogenesis Band, and I'll show you that right now, exactly what that looks like here in the models. And we see a lot of these. This is on the Pivotal Weather website. And here you can see that band, and this is the temperature gradient. The temperature gradient is parallel to the upper level flow, and this is the band of precipitation that is associated with that jet streak. I can show you that jet streak at 500 millibars here. A little bit earlier at 12Z, it was more apparent. And this is the jet streak embedded within this northwesterly flow, and usually the left exit region and the right entrance region of these jet streaks are associated with vertical motion, and that vertical motion is passing over this temperature gradient, acting to tighten that temperature gradient as well. And it's also contributing to a band of precipitation or snowfall as this jet streak slides off to the southeast. There were some winter weather advisories also for the northern Dakotas and southern Saskatchewan associated with the left exit region of that jet, and that jet's going to continue to pass to the east, and that's also going to bring snowfall across the Minnesota Arrowhead up there, where winter weather advisories are also in effect. And eventually, though, this right entrance region is going to pass east of western Montana. Still, though, that snow is expected to continue through the night tonight. Another jet streak is embedded within this northwesterly flow here, passing over this temperature gradient, and that's why we have winter weather alerts out there. Looking at the surface pressure fields, there you can see that front that continues to sag south, setting up shop there across western Montana into north central Wyoming as well, with that jet streak passing over this. That's leading to a Frontogenesis Band of precipitation and winter weather advisories across western Montana, northern Wyoming, and into the Black Hills. But this is only making the fire situation worse. You can see all these winds, these big northerlies as well, ahead of this arriving front, and that's why the fire danger is so high here across Colorado, and many of these fires still burn out of control. The Cameron Peak fire is now up to nearly 190,000 acres, and even though it is 57% contained, it is burning still largely out of control along the southern periphery. This one is starting to bleed into the northern portions of Rocky Mountain National Park. This has been, the flames have even been visible from the Estes Park area looking off to the northwest. These flames out here, up just to the north of the Big Thompson Canyon, these were visible from the Loveland area, even from just west of Loveland looking off to the northwest. You can see the ridge burning up here. And this is the Cameron Peak fire, which is now the largest wildfire in Colorado state history out here. And this is driven by these very dry conditions that have dominated this year. We have La Nina conditions that are developing in the tropical Pacific, which are likely going to lead to a very dry winter as well, dry and windy. And there's even a new fire, the East Troublesome fire here, that's actually visible from Grand, Colorado, visible from Grand Lake. That one updated 18 minutes ago, is up over 11,000 acres. This is certainly a fire that we need to keep an eye out. And all of these are in very regions that are very rugged and difficult to fight these fires. Looks like the Mullen fire, though, is definitely not quite as apparent. There's the Mullen fire up there, still very large. The Mullen fire is up at just shy of that Cameron Peak fire, updated 4 minutes ago, up at 176,000 acres. But with these fronts coming in and this strong northwesterly flow, They're usually dry frontal passages by the time they reach Colorado, even though they're bringing precipitation up across western Montana into north central Wyoming. By the time these fronts get down to Colorado, they're just associated with big time wind, dry conditions, and even the development of new fires out there, like the East Troublesome Fire. We've also got the Williams Fork Fire that continues to burn. That one's only at just shy of 15,000 acres, only 26% contained down there. But all of these fires, especially the ones to the north, the Cameron Peak Fire, the Mullen Fire, East Troublesome Fire, are responsible for major degradation of the air quality across the Front Range, including Denver. Boulder saw some of the worst air quality conditions yesterday evening that they've ever seen out there, with those classic ominous red sunsets. In fact, the visibility even dropped less than a quarter mile at times. But this is an update on those fires. Definitely only getting worse with time here, as the pattern, as these fronts, these dry fronts are coming down into the area, even though they are associated with some heavy snowfall up over portions of northern Wyoming into western Montana, where these winter weather alerts and even a winter storm warning, as we mentioned, issued up there. By the time they get down to Colorado, they're usually dry fronts. And let's look at the surface map really quick, and we could show you some of those winds and bad fire conditions out there. And then we're going to look at the different models for the forecast of tropical development in the Western Caribbean and what might happen with that system that could enter the Gulf of Mexico. It also could lift northeast along the Gulf Stream and really be largely a non-factor up there. But here is the surface map. There is the surface map, and showing some of that heavy snowfall up into northern Wyoming up there. 3-star snow. This is zooming in on Colorado. Let me see if I can shrink this down or expand it a bit so you can see that snow in Wyoming. And you can see that front coming southward. But there you can see that snow in northern Wyoming. Heavy snow actually getting reported right now in Buffalo with a temperature of 29 degrees in the upper 20s. Dew point 26. Sheridan, also 3/4 mile visibility in snow. But that main front is surging off to the south. The actual wind shift is dropping a little bit closer to the Cheyenne area, but look at some of those wind gusts, gusting up to over 40 miles an hour up here with those westerlies out ahead of this front. So as this front sags to the south, it's only going to accelerate the westerly winds over the Cameron Peak Fire, some of those other fires as well across northern Colorado. Those are going to continue to burn. That smoke's going to get transported downstream. Likely going to see a deterioration of air quality again this afternoon and evening as this front drops to the south. And then when the winds shift to the north, that's going to bring the smoke plumes down to the I-70 corridor from Cameron Peak. I'd also be a little bit worried that the Cameron Peak Fire could expand further into Rocky Mountain National Park with those northerlies to the north of Estes Park. So I do think that once these strong northerlies arrive with this dry, cold frontal passage across northern Colorado, it's only going to make conditions worse in terms of fire weather, with the Cameron Peak Fire now being the largest in Colorado state history. So now let's go and take a look at the tropics. And going back, we've got likely development that's going to happen with that currently non-tropical low to the southeast of Bermuda. Let's take a look at that right now here on satellite. Pulling it up here. There's been a bit of a convective flare-up associated with that. Here's that system. And boy, does it look like a non-tropical low still so far this morning. But this is likely to become a tropical system. We're expecting a flare-up of convection near the center of this upper level low. Right now it is a non-tropical upper low. You can really see that spin. A lot of the convection decoupled in the conveyor belt off to the east of this. Dry air getting taken into the center of this circulation. But the National Hurricane Center does expect a convective flare-up to definitely ramp up near the center of this convection. That could, or near the center of this cyclone, and that could develop, allow it to develop tropical characteristics over the next 5 days. right now it's just a spinning upper level low out here over the Sargasso Sea to the southeast of Bermuda. But once that convection begins to flare up near the center, that's going to release latent heat. That's going to lead to more pressure falls. It's going to lead to a more vertically stacked system. And it is possible that a tropical cyclone epsilon could form out of this. And in fact, it's expected to happen over the next 5 days. But you could definitely see that spin out there. But this is largely going to be a non-factor, at least in terms of its direct impacts. And really what we're watching is this area of convection just to the northwest of Colombia. This is going to continue to migrate, continue to organize over the western Caribbean, and eventually tropical development is expected near or just to the southwest of Jamaica in the next 5 to 7 days, especially the second half of next week. And some of the GFS runs are showing this tropical cyclone to lift off to the north across central Cuba. Some of the models, including the 18Z Gfs Run yesterday, were stalling out that system over the Florida Peninsula before migrating it back west over the Gulf of Mexico, developing it into a major hurricane, and then having that system meander down south toward the Yucatan. The 0Z models backed off of that a little bit with a weaker tropical cyclone stalling out over the Bahamas and then lifting off to the northeast out ahead of a trough. But now the 12Z GFS that I just looked at lifts this northward, stalls it out over the Bahamas, and then meanders a pretty stout tropical cyclone back over the Florida Strait between Florida, the Florida Peninsula, and Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico, and then anything is possible. But really these vastly different scenarios depicted by the GFS definitely depend on the development of a tropical cyclone there across the Western Caribbean. And the reason that there are those discrepancies in the evolution between an ejecting system or one that's going to become a prolific Gulf of Mexico storm is the evolution of a central U.S. trough. The 18Z GFS run yesterday showed a much weaker trough that would shear out over an anticyclone dominating over the southeastern U.S. And if that happens with a weaker system, a weaker trough across the central and eastern U.S., that would allow for a tropical cyclone coming out of the Western Caribbean to stall out over the Florida Peninsula or the Bahamas and then meander back west over the very warm waters of the southern Gulf of Mexico or the loop current, where there is some warm waters over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. The northern and northwestern Gulf of Mexico, those has been largely worked over by all the tropical systems that we've had so far this year, with Laura coming up into southwestern Louisiana, Delta making landfall just about 14 miles to the east of that. There's a lot of upwelling, a lot of cooler waters across the northwestern Gulf, but a lot of warm water remains across the southern Gulf of Mexico and the eastern Gulf of Mexico with that loop current. So if a tropical cyclone does develop out of the Western Caribbean, out near Jamaica, and lifts north through Cuba, and then intensifies and stalls out over the Bahamas or near the Florida Peninsula, and then meandering back to the west into the Gulf of Mexico, it's likely going to be a major hurricane and could even impact portions of the Yucatan once again as we get toward toward Halloween, maybe the beginning of October out there. So now I want to go over the GFS run from last night. I know we're not supposed to get bogged down too much in the individual model runs, especially this far in advance, with such discrepancies in the steering mechanisms, like that trough that when we did the briefing yesterday morning was forecast to become a major trough, high amplitude trough all the way down to the northern Gulf of Mexico, and then gaining a negative tilt and even increasing the potential for a hybrid type of a system or even a Sandy-like scenario in the northeastern U.S. Then when the afternoon and evening runs of the GFS came out, it was apparent that that central U.S. trough wasn't going to be as robust and actually would shear out over top that anticyclone. So we're going to analyze all the different steering mechanisms with these different runs. But first I want to show you, this is on the Pivotal Weather website, and this is the 18Z GFS run from yesterday. So this is a crazy run that Weather Twitter was going nuts about. There you can see that tropical cyclone developing to the west of Jamaica there. This is by about the 23rd, so the end of next week, so still very long time out, but I feel like something is going to come out of this gyre over the Western Caribbean with minimal wind shear, very warm water temperatures. It's just physics. It's almost impossible for there not to be a tropical cyclone coming out of that. Still though, the European is a lot less aggressive with the development of this hurricane to the south of Cuba. And the 18Z run yesterday brought a stout hurricane over the western side of Cuba and right over the warm waters of the Florida Strait, just to the south of the Florida Keys there. Continued to intensify. This is by the 25th, the morning of the 25th. Has a very stout hurricane just hammering southeastern Florida. Probably not going to happen, but still worth showing everybody. And the GFS, with a weaker trough coming into the central U.S. and actually shearing out over top this anticyclone that'll be dominating the southeastern U.S., actually caused the steering flow to go to zero for this tropical cyclone and then to stall out over the east coast of Florida, actually weakening just a little bit with the interaction of land. And then once that trough ejects off to the northeast and shears out over top the Bermuda High, that allows this high to expand over the northern Gulf of Mexico and actually causes this hurricane to retrograde back out over the Gulf, back out over the warm waters of the loop current here, and then to re-intensify and in very weak steering flow dominates in the south central Gulf of Mexico before meandering back to the south with another intercept over the northern Yucatan, coming very close to the Progreso area in the northwestern side of the Yucatan, maybe very close to Cancun again. I could probably head back there and check on the rental car situation after returning that rental in Merida. They're trying to say that they lost that rental car, which is just crazy, but thankfully I took photos while I was returning it there in Merida. Definitely lost the bumper, but the rental car is largely intact. I did purchase the insurance down there as well. But if this happens, this is going to be a mega disaster in the northern Yucatan. But as I mentioned, the 0Z run backed off of this a bit. And this just goes to show you how much uncertainty there is in the forecast. The 0Z run, though, did have that major hurricane coming into central eastern Cuba and then stalling out briefly over the Bahamas as a very intense hurricane. This could definitely be an issue for Nassau. Around the 26th of October, it's over the northern Bahamas. And then that trough is just enough coming in from the central and eastern U.S. by this run of the GFS that it kicks the storm system northeast. Could become an issue for the northeastern U.S., New England, maybe the Canadian Maritimes in this situation, depending on the evolution of that upper trough. If it can become intense, gain that negative tilt, and then pivot the system back in toward the coast. That's a possibility. But that's the 0Z run last night. Now we'll jump to this morning's run, and it's back to having this Gulf of Mexico solution with a weaker, sheared out trough from the central and eastern U.S. lifting up and over a more intense western lobe of the Bermuda High. And if you guys have been tuning in to these weather reports quite a bit throughout the season, that has happened a lot with the western lobe of this Bermuda High being a lot more intense than many of the models were forecasting, and that would allow these tropical systems to thrive inside the Gulf of Mexico and potentially impact portions of the Gulf Coast. One good thing about this situation with a weaker trough coming through the central U.S. is at least most of the models with this solution curl a powerful hurricane back south. But look at this one, the 12Z GFS, instead of curling that system back south of the Yucatan, actually has almost a Wilma-like situation with a powerful hurricane lifting up north toward the Gulf, retrograding back into the Gulf of Mexico, organizing, intensifying, and then getting picked up by the next trough that takes it into the western coast of Florida. So really anything is possible, and the NHC still has relatively low probabilities for a tropical cyclone to form yet across the western Caribbean. But this is definitely something that we need to keep a close eye on. This is the most recent run of the GFS, taking a pretty powerful system west again into the Gulf of Mexico before turning it back to the northeast over Florida. But definitely it looks like run to run, there's going to be a problem for central Cuba likely, the Florida Peninsula, portions of the Bahamas, maybe the northern Yucatan, and really regardless of which scenario happens, it looks like it's still going to be quite a problem. This is on the Incredible Tropical Tidbits website. This looks at the individual ensemble members, and you can see quite a bit of agreement, at least amongst the GFS members, for Tropical Cyclone Genesis out here west or near Jamaica. Something out of this area. The blob of convection right now is just northwest of the coast of Colombia. It's just going to continue to organize convective flare-ups, likely during the night. They'll die down a little bit during the day. Eventually, those pressure falls will be sufficient enough to sustain the convection throughout the diurnal cycle, and then likely we'll see the development of a stout tropical cyclone moving toward central and eastern Cuba. And these are the different members. Look how they diverge with time. Some of the GFS, depending on the evolution of that trough across the central and eastern U.S., some of the GFS members eject northeast along the Gulf Stream. Other members stall out near the Bahamas or near the Florida Peninsula before drifting back to the west. Other members have more slow development there over western Cuba. There you can see. And this is from 6Z last night, so this isn't quite yet the 12Z members, but you can definitely see the divergence in where these storms go. And it all depends on the evolution of that trough over the central and eastern U.S. If it's formidable enough to pick up this tropical cyclone, is tropical cyclone genesis slow enough to where this trough shears out and allows this high to build back to the west. That will cause a hurricane to move into the eastern Gulf of Mexico and potentially come back toward the Florida coast, as that 12Z GFS is showing. Or maybe there's not going to be a tropical cyclone at all that's going to develop out of this, but I still think that we're going to have a big late season hurricane, maybe the strongest yet that we've seen in the Atlantic Basin. So now let's look at the upper level pattern and the evolution of this trough that's going to lead to that meandering system in the Gulf of Mexico and likely a problem for Florida. Middle of next week, largely zonal flow. This is the beginning of a system that is going to evolve over the western and central U.S. Probably going to be a cutoff system over California. Backside loaded here, still largely zonal flow through the end of the week. You could definitely see that anticyclone here anchored over the southeastern U.S. again. This is the same anticyclone that we've seen throughout the season, tropical season so far this year, and it's allowed these hurricanes to be blocked from recurving on the western side of a Bermuda High. This anticyclone extending further west into the southeastern U.S. is allowing these hurricanes to pass into the Gulf of Mexico and just cause major problems along the Louisiana coast, even the Texas coast. Hurricane Hannah near Sabine Pass was also impacted by Hurricane Laura on the backside of that system. Hurricane Delta 14 miles to the east of it. Hurricane Sally, coastal Mississippi, Alabama, especially Pensacola Beach, getting hammered by that one. This one, many of the models are showing it stalling out near Florida over the Bahamas, bringing it back to the west in the Gulf of Mexico. Some of those models are showing this hurricane to recurve to the northeast, and all of it depends on the evolution of this trough and this big-time pattern shift. Weaker cutoff system off the coast of Florida. This is on the 23rd next week. This is the 12Z Operational Gfs, so still large uncertainty behind this. There you can see the upper low forecast to be to the southeast of Bermuda. So that could indirectly lead to impacts throughout this wave train that could lead to a weaker mid-latitude cyclone or a weaker upper-level storm system in the central U.S. And by the 24th, this is the big player. This is the system. This is the cutoff low swinging around the south side of this intensifying system across the Pacific Northwest. And this is the pattern shift that there's a lot of uncertainty between the models. If this system matures over the central U.S. and digs into the southeastern U.S., and it'll pick up this hurricane that could develop in the western Caribbean, lift in northeast, could even become a northeast hybrid type of a storm near the Canadian Maritimes. This is probably going to cause severe weather too toward the end of October. But really this slower system, slower, deeper evolution of this big time upper system and this pattern shift that's going to evolve toward the end of next week, next weekend, long ways out. The models have a lot of differences with this system. If this thing slows down and allows this anticyclone to dominate the southeastern U.S. and the northern Gulf of Mexico, then this tropical system will likely bend back to the west and become an issue in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe bend over Florida as well. But look at this anticyclone expanding over the north central Gulf Coast region. That's going to allow for this hurricane to head back into the Gulf of Mexico, re-intensify, and then it'll get picked up by this trough and then slam back into Florida. So really what we're seeing here and notice how this system in the central U.S. digs in the western U.S., matures, and then shears out over the top of this anticyclone dominating the southeastern U.S. If that happens, this hurricane is going to be a big problem in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, likely a big problem for the Florida Peninsula, maybe the Yucatan, likely the Bahamas as well. It's going to become a formidable system, and then this trough should be enough to pick up this hurricane finally. There is a chance, though, with a weaker system, if it shears out over top, this high allows it to re-solidify across the northern and eastern Gulf of Mexico. And who knows, maybe it'll just meander out there forever. But look at that around Halloween. Just a monster of a hurricane out there. And this is way out in fantasy land. But most of the models are showing it turning off to the northeast again. Getting barely picked up by that trough across the eastern U.S. toward Halloween or the beginning of November. But it sounds like this tropical cyclone, if it's able to develop in the Western Caribbean, is going to be something that we talk about for many days to come. Many of these briefings will just continue to hammer you with the latest, but what a weird pattern. It's hard to believe that this is going to materialize, but again, it is 2020. Weird things seem to happen. And look at how different the European model is 10 days out. This is October 26th. And definitely the GFS seems to be almost alone in its development of this massive megatroph across the Pacific Northwest. The GFS has done a pretty good job. But what difference is between the GFS and the European in the evolution of this central U.S. trough? And that's why there's so much uncertainty with it right now. It's possible that the European could be right, and there'll just be a very subtle system. It'll mature in the central and eastern U.S., and then any tropical cyclone that develops will just lift northeast ahead of this system. But if the latest runs of the GFS are right, and it digs this trough across the western U.S. and allows for the western expansion of that anticyclone across the southeastern U.S. and the northern Gulf of Mexico, then we've got big time problems that we'll have to monitor. So that's the tropical update. We can look back more at that blob that could become this low pressure across the western Caribbean. You can see a lot of convection here off the coast of Colombia, southern Central America as well. And this is just going to slowly meander up toward the western Caribbean Sea, and toward the end of next weekend, that's when we could have cyclogenesis out here and development of a tropical cyclone just to the west of Jamaica, maybe near Jamaica. It could lift north, stall out over the Bahamas, maybe over the Florida Peninsula. It could recurve to the northeast. And all of it depends on the evolution of that monster storm system that the GFS is forecasting to dominate the western U.S. and be a more slow, less progressive pattern that will allow the westward expansion of that Bermuda High across the southeastern U.S. and northern Gulf of Mexico, and then that would lead to a meandering hurricane. But quite a bit of convection out here just off the coast of Colombia, but this is going to be a slow burner, gradual development of a low pressure center across the western Caribbean, which is very warm. And the GFS is very confident on the development of a tropical cyclone there to the west of Jamaica, lifting north across central Cuba. And definitely going to have to keep an eye on it on the Bahamas, the entire Florida Peninsula. In fact, the whole Gulf Coast should keep an eye on it, including the Yucatan. And again, we have those winter weather alerts that are in place. Billings, likely going to see several inches of snow, at least 2 to 4 inches of snow in Billings, especially greater totals in the higher terrain outside of that. That pink there is about 6 inches, but there's going to be probably 2 to 4 inches with some melting as well. Higher totals are going to happen here in the mountainous areas, as well as the mountainous areas to the west of Cody, these mountains to the west of Buffalo, Sheridan, and we do have that upgrade to the winter storm warning near the Helena area because we've already had a few inches of snow with 4 to 5 inches additional expected, and all of this is because of this front that's through here with jet dynamics passing over that boundary, creating some upward motion, some lift, and that's manifesting as this precipitation band And also down here in the Black Hills, I'd love to be in Deadwood right now to experience that 2 to 5 inches of snow. It's raining right now, but that's going to change over to snow later on tonight, through the evening, through tomorrow. And 2 to 5 inches there expected on the casinos that are Deadwood in that area. So definitely have a good Saturday, everybody. I hope you guys enjoy my weather reports. I'm going to keep these coming. And we're going to continue to monitor this hot spot in the Western Caribbean and also that upper level low to the southeast of Bermuda, even though it's largely going to be a non-factor. But have a great rest of your Saturday. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on this weather briefing. I am planning on launching the Storm Chaser School. That's going to be next month, and I'm going to do that every week. I'm going to pick one day a week, whether Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not sure what day it's going to be yet. And then in the evening, we'll be doing an hour-long Storm Chaser School covering the basics of meteorology, the basics of forecasting, technology related to storm chasing, photography, even how to become a field scientist out there and deploy technology in the path of these storms to measure just how impactful they are as we're going out over time. You guys are the future of our field, and that's why this education component is so important to me. But I'm going to be sending this educational content through the Facebook supporter platform, through YouTube, as well as through Patreon. But just one night a week, we're definitely going to do this Storm Chaser School, so hopefully you guys enjoy that content as well. So thank you, everybody, for your Facebook support. Definitely come check us out. The link is in the text of this live stream to check out our community. I do these live briefings through the supporter community every single day, as close to every day as I can, while still trying to storm chase and cover these storms in the field. So thank you, everybody. Never stop chasing, and have a great rest of your Saturday.